In today's video, I'm going to tell you all about the Renogy Lithium battery. That's right, not the Battle Born Lithium battery, but the Renogy Lithium battery. And I'll cover three main points. First, why you need this mod on your rig. Second, how to install it. And third, how it performs. So stay tuned. All right, let's jump right in. So here we have the Renogy Smart lithium-iron phosphate 12-volt 100-amp-hour battery. Wow, that was a mouthful. Now let's talk about the first question. Why would you want this mod on your rig? What kind of benefits do you get? Well, the goal is really to be able to go off the grid for as much time as possible and not have to worry about your battery running out of juice. But let me back up just a little bit and kind of set the stage for this particular upgrade. So when you buy an RV, typically it actually doesn't come with batteries. Most of the time it leaves the factory without batteries, and then whatever dealer you buy it from actually preps the unit and puts a battery or two in there. It kind of just depends on the size of the rig and the dealer themselves. Most of them are going to throw in at least one battery, sometimes two, just kind of depending on the size of the rig. So when I bought this particular fifth wheel, it came with two batteries that the dealer installed. Now, the two batteries that my dealer prepped this unit with originally were nothing like this lithium battery here. They were basic lead acid batteries, and that's really the most common type of battery that most RV dealers are going to be putting in towables especially. Now, lead acid batteries are very inexpensive, they're affordable, and that's one of their big selling points. They're typically $60 to $70 for a basic battery, but they have lots of downsides. First of all, most of them only have about 60, 70, maybe 80 amp hours, just kind of depending on the size. But the bigger downfall is that you can only discharge a lead acid battery to about 50% of its capacity. Otherwise, if you do it repeatedly, it's just going to damage the battery and you're going to have to replace it sooner. So if you have a lead acid battery that has 60 amp hours, you really only have 35 amp hours of capacity. Now, if you've got a big rig like this one here, that's not going to get you very far. So my unit came with two 65 amp hour lead acid batteries. And so you think, oh great, you've got 130 amp hours, right? Well, no, again, you can only discharge to 50% of that capacity. So I really only had 65 amp hours. And for a rig this size, that's not going to get you very far. And so behold the lithium battery. It pretty much solves all those problems. Right here, I've got a 100 amp hour rated battery. And so compared to what I had before with two 65 amp hour lead acid batteries, I actually have more usable power. I can go off the grid longer with this single lithium battery compared to the two batteries I had before. And there are plenty of other benefits with lithium batteries. The first one is you can mount them in any direction pretty much. With lead acid batteries, you always have to have them horizontally mounted, so the fluid stays in the battery and doesn't leak out. But that's not the case here with this lithium battery. You can turn it in any direction you choose. So if I wanted to, right now I've got it traditionally mounted horizontal right here, but I could turn it vertical and fit a second or a third battery in this particular bay. Not a problem with lithium batteries. Also, those vents on the outside of your rig, you do not need those with lithium batteries. With lead acid batteries, you've always got those vents on the outside and then those hoses inside your rig, and then that giant battery box that encases the lead acid battery to allow it to vent properly. But here with lithium batteries, we don't have to worry about any of those venting issues. So you can get rid of your hoses, you can get rid of those giant cases that take up space, and now you just have a lithium battery that's easy to get to. And again, I think the biggest advantage of lithium batteries is you get to use the full amp hour capacity. So when you've got a lithium battery that's rated for 100 amp hours, you get access to that full 100 amp hours. In other words, you can charge this up to its full capacity, discharge it all the way down to zero, repeat again and again and again, and that is perfectly fine for a lithium battery. Second, let's talk about how to install a lithium battery on your rig. Now I'm going to pull in real tight here on the label so you can get all the specs you need. You can see this is the V2 version of this Renogy battery there. And again, it is rated at 100 amp hours. It is maintenance free, meaning you don't have to worry about topping it off like a lead acid battery or checking the level. And it's a pretty basic design. It looks like just about any other lead acid battery. It has the standard positive and negative terminals, just like you'd expect. And then this one has two ports on the front here, and these almost look like Ethernet jacks. And one of the ports is used to link different batteries together if you have them in series. The other one is used actually when you first get the battery and you install it, you have to actually turn the battery on. So instead of having a switch that's mounted on the battery itself, they give you a little Ethernet dongle, just a short cable that plugs in to one of the jacks, and then it has a little power button on it, and you basically hold that power button on, and that kind of activates the battery more or less and turns it on. And I think they do that because the battery might sit on a shelf somewhere in transit, you know, from the time it's manufactured to the time you get it as a customer. And so they want to make sure that battery is kind of in a dormant or sleeping state so that it doesn't have any adverse effects by the time you get it. And so that's what these little ports here are on the front. Otherwise, it's pretty basic. Now, let me give you some dimensions on this particular battery. So you can see there, it is about 11¼ inches long, and the tallest, or the tallest and widest portion of the battery is the top here. It does narrow just a little bit, kind of tapers at the bottom. And then you can see it is about 6 3/4 inches wide there. And then the actual height on the battery is about 7½ inches. So it's really fairly compact. And what I really like about this battery is not only is it compact, but again, you can turn it on its side. So right now I've only got one battery in my battery bay compartment door, but if I really wanted, I could actually turn this battery on its side and have it go vertically right here and have 1, 2, 3 batteries. Yes, that's right, 3 batteries in this battery bay compartment. And I think that's pretty cool. Now, installing the battery is pretty straightforward, right? You just have your negative cable and your positive cable. You connect them to the appropriate terminals on the battery and you're done. And that's going to apply for most people if you're just swapping one battery going to this lithium battery. But for me, I did have 2 batteries before, 2 lead acid batteries. I had one here in this compartment and then a second one on the opposite side of this wall in the forward storage. So I did have to reconfigure my cables just a little bit since I was going from 2 batteries to 1 battery. So that's something you'll just want to research online, make sure you get your connections right. But otherwise, it's just putting your negative terminal and your positive terminal together. And that's it, you're all done, right? Well, not quite. It's not that simple. So most rigs come from the factory with a charger, right? Or a converter charger, maybe you've got a combo that charges your battery bank up. And most of them are designed exclusively for lead acid batteries. And the reason is lead acid batteries have a slightly different voltage compared to lithium batteries. So here's what'll happen. If you don't change out or upgrade your charger on your rig and it's designed for lead acid batteries, that existing charger is only going to charge your lithium battery up to about 80%. That's right, only 80%. So if you've got a 100 amp hour lithium battery that you've installed on your rig, but you still have your old converter charger or charger in your rig, and it's really designed for lead acid batteries, it's only going to charge that lithium battery up to about 80% or 80 amp hours if you've got a 100 amp hour rated battery. And that's kind of crummy, right? You spend all this money on a nice 100 amp hour lithium battery, and now you only get to make use of 80% of it, or 80 amp hours. But don't worry, as the solution to fix this problem is actually not that complicated. So here we are on the inside of the rig, and we're looking at a black box. You're gonna have one very similar to this on your rig. And behind the doors, you know, is your 120 volt breakers along with your 12 volt fuses. And in almost every RV behind this particular panel, you're going to have another device in an enclosure, usually a silver metal enclosure, and that's going to be your actual converter charger that basically takes the 120 volt shore power and charges your battery and also converts it to all these 12 volt devices here that are labeled. Now, if you've got a smaller rig where space is limited, it's possible that the manufacturer may have put an all-in-one converter charger and breaker box, meaning that this whole panel here is directly connected to your converter charger. And if that's the case, you're going to have to replace everything, unfortunately, and move all your breakers over. I did do an install on a Nobo 10.6, which is a small overlanding rig where that was the case, and so I'll throw a link up to that particular video. But most people, especially if you have a larger rig or travel trailer where there's plenty of space to hide things like a converter charger in cabinetry, such as the case here, then you're going to have 2 separate pieces. And so the install, the upgrade portion of that converter charger is actually quite simple. Now, I found in the RV world, this WFCO brand for breaker panels is really the most common brand that you'll see. And so yours is probably very similar to this. But to get access behind this panel, you just need to take off this bezel by removing the 4 screws on each corner here. And once you do that, this whole trim piece is going to come off. And then it's going to give access to 4 more screws that are actually holding the whole enclosure on. And so when you do that, you can then gently pull out this entire breaker panel. Just be really careful because there's going to be a lot of wires attached to it, both 120 volt and 12 volt. But before you do that, just double check that your manufacturer didn't give you another way to access your converter charger box without having to remove all that. A lot of times you'll find they put these in cabinetry because that way they can hide everything real easily. And in mine, you can see I've got an L-shaped kitchen. And so you'll notice on the other side of that wall, I've got 2 drawers here. And then down below, I've got another access panel where they put some screws there holding it on. But what I really like about this setup is I don't even have to take off this access panel if I want. I can just take this drawer out easily and see inside. Let me show you what I mean. So you can see I just took this one drawer out here and suddenly I've gained access to this whole compartment back here, making it really easy to service. And you can see there are a lot of different wires here, and that is the back of the breaker box right there. But then down here below, this silver enclosure right here, the IntelliPower 9100, that's actually my converter charger box. And so this is the piece of equipment that we need to upgrade in order to be compatible with lithium batteries. Now you can see here I went with the Progressive Dynamics IntelliPower 9100. It is model PD9160AL. And when you're choosing one of these converter chargers, the goal is to match as closely as possible the amp rating. So for instance, on the converter charger that I had in here before, I'm pretty sure it was a WFCO, and I think it was rated at 55 amps. And so when I got this Progressive Dynamics model, this one's actually rated at 60 amps. So if you have to exceed it a little bit, that's okay, but basically you don't want to be underpowered. Now, as far as installing one of these converter chargers, it might look a little intimidating at first, but they're really quite simple. There's really only 4 cables that you have to work with here. You can see there is a positive cable, a negative cable, then there's this grounding wire here, and then there's the power cable for the actual converter charger, the 120 volt power cable. So really all you have to do is look at your existing setup, maybe take a picture of it beforehand, then unhook your 4 cables there. And the 120 volt typically is just actually plugged into your breaker panel behind this wall here. And so you're just going to carefully swap it out, make your connections, and you're all set. Of course, you want to make sure you disconnect your battery, unplug from shore power, all that good stuff before you get started. But if you're going to go to the trouble and spend the money on a lithium battery or a lithium battery bank, you definitely want to upgrade your converter charger so that you gain access to the full amp hours of that new lithium battery or bank. Like I said, you can leave your existing converter charger in place without upgrading it. It's just you're only going to get about 80% of the amp hours that that lithium battery is rated for. So definitely recommend upgrading that converter charger while you're at it. Now, for those of you who have made it this far in the video, congratulations. I am going to give you a bonus tip. A lot of times manufacturers, when they do these bays where all your breaker panel and converter charger come together, you can see there are wires all over the place. And so I like to spend just about 10-15 minutes extra, get some tie wraps and start organizing all those wires, put them together, tie them off to the side so that you don't have a mangled mess inside your bay here. It just looks a lot neater and makes it a little bit easier to work on in the future. All right, that's your bonus tip. So once you get that converter charger upgraded, you can go back out to your battery bank and reconnect your positive and negative terminals and then test it out. Now, what I really like about the Progressive Dynamics converter charger is it is a smart charger. And so it doesn't just charge this battery at a constant rate. It can detect the fact that this battery is nearly depleted and then give it its full power, the full wattage to recharge it. And then it senses when the battery is starting to get up to full capacity and slows down that charging rate so it doesn't damage the lithium battery. So really smart feature. Now let me give you one other install tip. If you're like me and you had a lead acid battery, then you probably have one of those giant battery boxes with the vent hose attached that runs to the outside. And of course, like I mentioned before, with lithium batteries, you do not need to vent them. And so you can actually take out that giant battery box, get rid of that vent hose, and it just frees up a whole lot of space in your battery compartment. Makes it a lot cleaner, a lot easier to get to. The only thing you have to do then is figure out how to secure the battery so it's not flying around down when you're going down the road. So what I did is I just got a basic strap here and then just mounted 2 D-rings on either side and attached the strap to the D-rings and ran over the top of the battery and snugged it up. And this has worked perfectly for me, has not moved at all. You can see it's very secure in this compartment. Really works great. And the other thing I like about this is if I ever decide to upgrade to a second or maybe even a third battery in this compartment, I can actually fit them all vertically and still make use of this exact same strap. So definitely recommend getting rid of that battery box. Frees up a lot of space and just makes it look a whole lot cleaner. And most of the time you can reuse your existing positive and negative battery cables when upgrading to lithium batteries. But if you're like me and you're going from 2 lead acid batteries to 1 lithium battery, you may need to reconfigure your cables as I had to do here. So I will include a link in the description below where you can get these high quality battery cables that are pre-made in different lengths. And I think this one's a 4 or 6 gauge. But they're really well made, hydraulically crimped here, so you just don't have to worry about that coming undone. It's just one less thing to have to worry about later on, so definitely recommend doing that all at the same time. Now let me address the third question. How does it perform? In other words, would I buy it all over again? Now, if you're doing research on lithium batteries, you probably know that the Battle Born battery is kind of king of the hill in the RV industry when it comes to upgrading to lithium batteries. So why did I go with Renogy, or why should you go with Renogy? I was a little reluctant initially because I hadn't heard a lot about the company and there really weren't a lot of reviews or a lot of RVers posting reviews about their experience with the Renogy battery. So I kind of took a gamble on the Renogy Lithium battery, although I did find one reviewer online that is, I believe, an electrical engineer, and he basically just takes apart, dismantles all sorts of different lithium batteries and discusses how they're put together and the parts, and he seemed to know what he's talking about and really spoke very positively about the construction of this Renogy battery. Now, the one big difference that I am aware of compared to a Battle Born battery is that this has actual packets inside of it as opposed to cells. Now, I'm not an electrical engineer and I'm not an expert in the area, so I'm not going to try to explain that further. But all that to say, I really think that this battery is well made and I have no concerns about it holding up over the long haul. Now, I've owned the Renogy Lithium battery and had it installed on my rig for about 6 months, and I have 0 issues to report. It has worked absolutely flawlessly. In fact, one time when I was putting the rig in storage, I accidentally left the 12-volt compressor fridge on. I forgot to turn it off. And then I came back a few days later and discovered it, and the battery was almost completely discharged, but yet it had enough juice for me to open the slides up still. And here's what's really interesting. When I went back to the Victron battery monitor and looked up the usage, it actually had delivered at that point 104 amp hours. And remember, it still had enough juice to open up all my slides. So that just gave me confidence that the battery being rated at 100 amp hours really delivers that true 100 amp hours and more. And so I applaud Renogy for having integrity, because a lot of battery companies, especially the off-brand ones, will give you an amp hour rating, but then if you actually test them in real world situations, they don't actually deliver that full rated amp hour capacity. So again, on this Renogy battery, I got more than that 100 amp hour rating in that particular occasion. And speaking of the Victron battery monitor, if you haven't already done that upgrade, that's something you're really going to want to do, especially after upgrading to lithium batteries. And basically what it is, it's a shunt here you can see that interrupts the negative lead going from your battery, and it just monitors all the use and activity coming from that battery, and it gives you really accurate insights into what's going on, your usage, and all that good stuff. And of course, inside your rig, you get this nice display readout with all the stats on your battery. But the really cool feature with the Victron battery monitor is that you can connect through Bluetooth and get all that data on your phone. And that's really what I like about the Victron battery monitor, is you really get insight into what's going on with your battery. So definitely recommend upgrading to that. I did do a video on that previously, and I'll put a link above as well as in the description below. Let me just give you some final thoughts here on the Renogy Smart Lithium Iron Phosphate battery. Now, why would you purchase this Renogy model instead of the more common, more popular Battle Born battery, right? I mean, after all, Battle Born has been long established as kind of king of the hill in the RV industry. So why even bother with another brand here like this Renogy battery? Well, I think the big selling point here is the Renogy battery is typically going to be $100 to $150 less than the Battle Born comparable 100 amp hour lithium battery. And so that's really its main selling point. I think you're going to get 95% of the features and performance here in this Renogy product as you're going to get in the Battle Born battery. And I've owned both. Like I said earlier in the video, I have another rig where I did the Battle Born battery install, and so I've used that one, very familiar with it, and now I've used this Renogy for about 6 months. And really, to the end user, I think you're going to get the same experience at the end of the day. And so really the cost savings is the big selling perk. The other perk I can think of is this Renogy battery is distributed and sold through some other stores, more common stores that you might be shopping at, maybe where you have a coupon or some kind of reward or a gift card to use. And so for instance, I got this through Home Depot. Even though they don't stock it or sell it in their stores, they were distributing it through their website, and I was able to use a gift card on it, and so it didn't cost me anything. So that's another benefit. So just shop around and see what the prices are, but I really think you're getting a good solid value with this Renogy battery, and I would have no hesitations to buy it all over again. All right, that's it for our video today. Thanks for watching. I hope you found it really helpful. If you did, be sure to give me a thumbs up and click that subscribe button if you're not already. I will include affiliate links in the description below where you can purchase all the different products you saw featured in today's video. As always, if you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them below and I'll do my best to respond. Thanks for watching.